everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Chalkboard Chats. My name is Henry. I'm a life coach for teachers. And on this channel, we discuss all things teaching and everything in support of teachers. And today I wanted to discuss with you a concept that has made my life so much easier. And it is the idea of pure and simple teaching. And I feel that we unconsciously, as teachers, contribute to the narrative where we talk about how many tasks we have and how much is required of us. And yes, it is true. We have many different tasks. We don't only teach, but then also grade. And then I have a lot of other admin. And at some point, I realized that we are actually keeping this narrative going on and we're adding to it. And therefore, everything gets put on the teacher. And I don't think we should ask more of teachers because, let's face it, our plates are full. But it's so normal in education to constantly ask more of the teacher, that the teacher has to, fill up their toolkit with all the different things. Not only have we need to have a lot of knowledge of the subject that we teach, but we also need to have a lot of knowledge of children themselves. We need to make sure to have like classroom management knowledge, and it just like, and the list goes on and on and on. And I don't think it's very useful. And I don't think it gets us to, contribute in a positive way in education. I think if we step back and focus on what our job is, what we're hired for, then we are a lot more effective. And I think then education, hopefully, will stop adding all the responsibilities and adding more onto our plates. So what I'm talking about is the hats. Because there's this idea that a teacher is wearing many hats, that they're not just a teacher, but that they have so many different functions and so many different roles. And the way that we talk about it is almost as if we take pride in it, like, oh, we are so many more things. We are so much more than quote unquote just a teacher. And I don't want to argue necessarily with that we are just a teacher, but I don't think it's very useful to take on all of those different roles because, one, we already have a role, and two, it feels as if we then also need to excel at these different expectations, these different roles. So I had a look at the different hats that we supposedly are wearing. We're not just teaching, we're not just teachers, we are also entertainers, a coach, mentor, mediator, comedian, a friend, a role model, a cheerleader, a nurse, an artist, a musician, referee, motivator, and the last one, zookeeper. Now, when I say I disagree, yes. When you have a big class with loads of students, then it feels as if I'm sometimes a zookeeper. There is no order, and the order that I try to establish just gets ignored. It's a group full of monkeys. The difference is, though, however, I don't lock them up. And I don't think that I am a referee. When I do activities and games and I divide the class up in, let's say, team blue, team green, I do try to teach them how we keep score and how it works and how do you get points. But what a referee focuses on is that it is fair for everybody. And I disagree because life is not fair. So sometimes there are situations where one team gets a point over the other team, but with like, I don't know, suspicious circumstances. But because I am a teacher, I can only teach them. I can only instruct the knowledge that I have. And I am not a referee who will investigate and make sure that, that everybody knows all the rules and all the exceptions. That's not what we're doing. It's supposed to be a short, fun game where we get to interact with the material, and that sometimes just does not go fairly, not for everybody, not all the time. And to expect from a teacher to become a referee, all of a sudden I have to go through all of the clauses, all of the situations, all of the exceptions, all of the expectations. We don't have time for that. So no, I'm not a referee. One of them is also nurse. No, I am not trained in anything like that. Again, when I look at that job, quote unquote, the hat of a nurse, I don't think anybody wants me to act like a nurse, especially not the nurse, because my solution may make it worse. My apologies, nurse. But no, if there is an incident and there is blood, I have to show up as the teacher. I have to make sure that I take responsibility for what happens after. Therefore, I do not act as the nurse, I act as the teacher. I share the knowledge that I have. I instruct them to be able to deal with the blood, and I can share with them how I would do it in my situation. If I were bleeding, I would get a bandage. Where do we get a bandage? First aid kit. Well, who's going to get the first aid kit? There we go. I am not the one who's going to be the nurse, because that means I take responsibility for the healing. No, that's not what I do. That's not my job. My job is a teacher, and the most effective in that situation is to show up as the teacher. And then the other one is motivator, which is interesting because it's like then we judge the motivation that the student has. And if the motivation is towards learning the material that we teach, then we're like, we approve of this use of motivation. But if the student is motivated in a very different direction, all of a sudden we're like, no, that's not what we should be motivated for. And it feels manipulating, and it's not my job. If there is an issue with motivation, let's say, I have to fall back, or I fall back on me being a teacher, where I instruct and tell them that the motivation that they have for, let's say, a hobby, they have no interest in learning, but they only want to do their hobby, and their grades are going down. Me as a teacher, I feel responsible for telling them that this is the path if they are going on, that at the end there will be a test. If they don't have the knowledge, they will fail. And what are the options after the failure? I am there for them throughout their failure. But I feel as if we now want to manipulate students, and we only approve of their use of motivation if it is in the topic that we teach or in the direction that we approve of. I'm like, no. Students will fail, and they need to have a person next to them that is a teacher that they can rely on to be a teacher, not a manipulator, but to guide them through the steps. And it is not about letting them fail. No, they would fail on their own anyway. But now I help them and I instruct them through this failure, and how can we deal with failure on the other side? Because we have different options when we succeed, and we get different options when we fail. How bad is it? Can we do something about it? Will this happen again? And it will feel awful. So from the perspective of teachers, when I step back to teaching, all of a sudden it feels like it's clean, it is simple. I only teach. And when I don't teach the subjects, I teach English. But when I don't teach the subject, so for example, when it's in a situation where the student has no motivation to learn, I only can guide them through a learning process. So I help them with, here are the grades, here are the tests, and when you're looking at the tests, this is the grade that you have, and here is why. How to deal with failure, how to deal with lack of motivation, how to deal with being somewhere where you don't want to be. Because I understand that, but I don't need to change it because they are free spirits. They are free with their mind, and they have control over their own attention. If they want to spend it somewhere else, I am not going to manipulate it into what I approve of, what we approve of. I think it is a lot more useful and helpful for the students when we fall back into, we are a teacher and we are always there for you. You fail, you lose, you stumble, it is fine. I am there for you all the time as the teacher. I will not be there as the judge. I am not there as a parent. I am not there as a, what else? Mediator. Mediator I found also very interesting, because when I think of mediation, it is two parties wanting a third person to help them with their issues. However, I don't think that any student asks for teacher interference. So they don't ask for a mediator, which again feels very manipulative, because then I force two humans together to figure it out to my satisfaction, not their satisfaction. Instead, if I keep showing up as the teacher, I can teach them how to coexist, co-work, co-study without their, they don't have to be friends. They don't have to get along. They don't have to do anything. I just end the war, but I don't need to all of a sudden be able to completely work together well. No, because outside of school, that's not how real life works. We can work together with humans we're not a big fan of. Doesn't mean we have to start a war. Doesn't mean that we purposely go to the other person to hurt them. No, I just separate them, but they don't need to get along with each other, because that is me wanting them to behave in a different way. Again, feels manipulative. And I think that is one of the biggest things that I now feel as a teacher, where we get pushed into all of these different roles and we get all of these different expectations put on us. I think, no, in my contract, it says I am a teacher. Therefore, I show up every single time as a teacher, which makes my students trust me, because they always rely on just the teacher, not a friend, because a friend will laugh about the mistakes and they will cheer on with like, oh yeah, do stupid things because that's what friends do. No, the student is not helped with me being their friend. The student is always better helped with me being their teacher. So I help them with the learning and I help them on their learning journey. That if they face an obstacle in the learning journey, I am there as a teacher. If they fall down and they're bleeding, I am there as a teacher. If they want to, artist and musician, I am not an artist. I'm not an art critic. I can only guide them through, here's what we have. We have art, here are the tools, and get them on a learning journey through with art. That does not mean that I teach them art. I don't teach them how to do it. I teach them a relationship with art. What I usually do is I do the activities with them, if it is art, and I purposely comment on my own art with positive reinforcement. So as soon as I put the drawing on the board, I tell them, oh, wow, isn't it amazing? Isn't it beautiful? Wow. And then I also give them ideas on how to, encourage me. Teacher, this is amazing drawing. Wow, you're such a great artist. All I do is I teach them a way to interact with the world. And they can learn from me if they want. They don't have to, because most of the students are, teacher, my drawing is so bad. I'm like, that's it. No, no, we need more artists. We need all the people who want to make beautiful things, have the confidence to show them to other people, because that's what we enjoy. I have an empty wall. I want to fill it up. How useful is it that this artist was confident enough about their own art so that they expanded and explore it and they put it out there for other people to enjoy? That is my role. My role is to guide them through all of these different things. But my role is always as a teacher, not as a mediator, not as a referee, certainly not as a musician, not as a cheerleader, definitely not as a zookeeper, although I do sometimes want to lock them up, but hey, there we are. I'm not a comedian. I do think I'm very funny, but they don't have to find it interesting. They don't have to find it funny at all. I'm not a mediator. It's not in my intention to force two people to get along with each other, or that they have to be nice to each other. They can ignore each other for all I care. They just have to learn to coexist with humans they are not a big fan of, and that's okay. So when I think of pure and simple teaching, this weight of all the different expectations are just falling away. Because if I take on the role as a nurse, all of a sudden I feel very inadequate as a nurse. What do I know about the human body? I've never studied it. Oh no, I've studied it, but I was very young. And all of the, the first aid courses, you have to keep up with them every year, meaning every year there is a reason to get it updated, because science advances. So what I've learned probably 20 years ago, we don't do that anymore. But I don't need to take on that role, because one, I am bad at it. Two, it's not my job. And three, I think I make it worse for the person whose job it actually is. If I show up as a nurse and I'm like, yeah, listen, I know what I'm doing, and I actually don't, the actual nurse or the doctor first has to undo my work before they can actually start with their work. My job is to be a teacher. So if something is happening, I show up as the teacher. I help them navigate the situation, and I do not show up as the nurse. And when I think of pure and clean teaching, I come from a place of the intention of just to impart knowledge, just to instruct, and I don't have a hidden agenda. I don't have a hidden agenda of needing the student to succeed, or needing the student to be motivated to learn, or needing the student to, actually learn this and be excited about it and show up in the way that I want, because that is manipulation. And these are free humans with their own free will, and they don't come to me to be manipulated. They come to me to learn. And when I get out of my role and try to be all these different types of roles, it feels insincere. It feels manipulative. Teaching, like pure and simple teaching, when you always in any situation step back to the role that you have, the role as teacher, all of a sudden life becomes so much simple, and this job is a lot lighter to navigate through. Because when there is, for example, an injury and I show up as a teacher, I instruct some people to take care of the injured. I instruct some people to take care of the surroundings. I instruct some people to take care of get help. And all I do is stand there as the teacher. I am here to help you through this situation. We can do this together. But if I were to show up as the nurse, my focus would be solely on the injured, leaving the rest of the group out ignore them, ignore the surroundings. That's not helpful. That is not what we want. When there is an injury, when there is a situation where somebody's injured, somebody needs to show up as the teacher. How do we figure out this situation? Because if there's a situation with a human who's injured, we need to, like, it's not just the injured person. If I am a nurse, then I focus on the injured person, but that's not life. Life is, there's an injured person, and then there is stuff happening around. Maybe there's traffic, maybe we're out on a little trip, maybe we're in a classroom and it's two students who bumped into each other. If I focus on one of the injured, I completely ignore the other one. That's not what we want. So I show up as the teacher and I help everybody involved through this situation. And let me tell you, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this job is fun because I get to show up just as the teacher. I have one hat on my head and I don't need to split myself into all of these different types or all of these different personalities. And I don't have to, excel in all of these different things. No, no, no. I'm a teacher. That is what I do. And that's where I stay. Now, I hope this concept really helps. Please let me know what you think. Have a wonderful day and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.